How far into the knowledge work basically can AI go? Can it replace all of us altogether?
Pleased to have on the show today Olivier Legrand. He is from France, where he spent a large part of his career working overseas in many large organisations, most notably LinkedIn, where he grew revenues from $0 to $1 billion.
I have to be an optimist because I'm building on that underlying technology. I have to say it is a bit scary as everything brand new. We're definitely wrong about the timeline which it was going to deliver it. We thought everything was going to work really fast.
Yeah. Give us a sense of where was the genesis of the idea come from?
50 to 60% of the activity is spent collecting documentation, restructuring it, copying, pasting it, and we can't hire those people anymore. Younger generations, they come in, they do this job for 6 months, and after that they say, okay, well, I've done that. What's next for me?
Hello, and welcome to Behind the Numbers, the podcast that seeks the personalities behind the technology industry. So before I dive into our very special guest today, I'd like to remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by Kinetic Core. They're an organisation that help power companies through AI-enabled business services. So if you're interested in a free growth consultancy, drop the word grow into the DMs and we'll take it from there. Great to have you on the show, Olivier. Thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So let's get straight to it. So, if anyone who follows you on LinkedIn, they'll see you've had quite a wide and varied career path. Give us a sense of that, distill it down, tell us some of the core things that you've delivered at some of the companies over the last year.
Distill it down. Started my career in banking as part of a bank, Paribas, that then became BNP Paribas. I fell into the web through one specific use case, which is online brokerage, stock brokerage. And I like to say that we're talking 97, 98. So I like to say that online dating and stock brokerage were two of the very immediate use cases where the web brought, instant value. Buying stocks by seeing the bid and ask and being able to deliver your order by yourself instead of calling someone was very efficient. And so it was really fun. So my first job was product, building transactional websites. And of course, the value was immediate in the sense that I remember joining a company with a big call center with 100 people on it. And then 6 months later, once we launched the platform, 90% of transactions were going through the web. Most of the new client acquisition was going through the web, which was mind-blowing, to be honest. I did not expect such a fit in technology. And the call center that I was talking about became more of a support, platform for the transactional website. And I realized the power of the internet by just doing this. After doing this for 6 years, I moved to Asia. So Asia is a big part of my life. I lived there for 19 years, moved to Hong Kong, started a company called Creasia. And so there was more learning how to grind and build a company from the ground up for the first time, especially in a foreign country. Although a foreign country that was so entrepreneurial in nature. And that's what I loved about Hong Kong. Everybody I met there had one or two companies, like side hustles and you name it. And so very conducive environment to build a new business. It was a digital production agency. Did this for a couple of years, was not a huge success, but a huge learning, I would say. Big learning for me there was whenever you start a company, you need to be very clear with your partners in terms of what it is that you want to build and what are your ambitions. Like the mistake I'd made was not to clarify how big was what I intended to build. And I had partners who were very happy with the organic growth and just steady, reasonable growth. And that was a disconnection that we didn't anticipate until we had a product market fit. Like at the beginning, you are just life or death. Is it going to work or not going to work? And then when it works, it's like, how big do I want this to be? And so that was a big thing there at Creasia. Then I joined Dow Jones, which is the publisher of the Wall Street Journal. Had a lot of fun there building local language properties, local language websites. The most successful one is a website called ChineseWJ.com, which is still up and running and was at the time, there was Financial Times had a similar approach as well, FT Chinese and WJ Chinese. So a unique opportunity for Chinese people to get access to international news in Chinese and in language. We also built a whole set of other blogs and so on that were always bilingual. They were called real-time blogs. So they were like English and Korean, Japanese and English, etc., for all market. And the goal there was to build a local audience and of course to monetize it. So we built a business from 0 to 50 million over the course of 6-7 years. And then I got the amazing opportunity to join LinkedIn in Asia as part of the early employees there. Moved from Hong Kong to Singapore, opened the Singapore office. There were 5 of us when we started, and did a 10 years long journey at LinkedIn from 5 to 2,500 employees and from 0 to $1 billion in revenue. 7 of those
Wow.
10 years, I was the managing director and the CEO for the region. So really incredible opportunity to learn scale basically, and really from scale from 0 to, usually scale is from 0 to 50, 50 to 100, 100, like this was 0 to a billion, which was quite unique in
Yeah,
its nature.
absolutely.
And then came back to France 19 years after my departure, joined a French company called Brevo, formerly known as Sen Blue, as part of the team who rebranded it, which was also a really interesting platform. Did the journey from 40 to 100 million in AR. Very different relationship marketing platform, marketing automation for small businesses. So again, like scale, but in a slightly mostly self-serve scale, was the learning there, and really interesting dynamic between cost of acquisition, long time, LTV to CAC, and how you build a sustainable business there. And after a couple of years at Brevo, I decided to go back into entrepreneurship with my 2 partners, Grégoire and Pierre, and we launched Little John, which is, again, a very different environment because we're talking about insurtech and specifically insurance for insurance intermediaries, like building AI tools for insurance intermediaries is what we do day in, day out now.
Wow. Well, that's quite a journey and quite an amazing set of outcomes that you've delivered for the companies over the years, right? So, yeah, a lot to unpack on there, and I'm sure your venture into Little John's going to be well placed in terms of your skill sets there. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about. I think you touched on something right at the beginning. I just wanted to sort of get your sense because everyone's talking about AI at the moment, and you talked about that going online brokerage at the beginning and how that turned a call center from being operating the process into more of a service center, and how that technology was impacted that dynamic. Are you a pessimist or an optimist with AI at the moment in terms of there's one school of thought thinks it's going to get rid of everyone's jobs, and there's another school of thought that thinks actually it's going to help us have deeper relationships by automating a lot of the work that we're doing that's very manual in the background, etc. Where do you sit on that?
I have to be I have to be an optimist because I'm building on that underlying technology. I have to say it is a bit scary as everything brand new, and that's going to revolutionize the way we work. The approach we take is really the enhancements or the empowerment of brokers through AI, and the reality is, in a number of use cases, the tasks that we're able to automate through AI, it makes everybody happy that they're automated because it's not really where the maximum value can be delivered. The question is how far into the knowledge work basically can AI go? I mean, I have a perspective that it is somehow the story that the big LLM providers want to say is that it's going to be able to do everything and anything, and they might be right. My perspective is it's going to take a little bit of time, but it can do already a lot of things that are extremely valuable on a specific end of the spectrum, which is really this repetitive administrative tasks. And there, yes, it's going to create productivity and potentially require less people to do those jobs. But the other reality we see, at least in our space, is like there's less and less people that want to do those jobs anyway. And so, it can create a balance. The question is like, how far can it go? Can it replace all of us altogether and we'll just look at agents doing the work? I always think of it in, I think that's my learning from the first internet days and the rise of internet, 97, 98. You remember in 2000, everything crashed. And essentially, it didn't crash because we were wrong about what the web was going to deliver, but we were definitely wrong about the timeline at which it was going to deliver it. We thought everything was going to work really, really fast, except the internet was really slow, that we're not that good at building websites, or we were building websites that worked on Internet Explorers, but then they weren't working on another browser. There were a lot of learning, that needed to be acquired for the web to deliver its full value. And I think although things tend to move at a faster pace, I think probably in AI, the day where everything will be run by agents and we'll just sit on the sideline is a little further away that some would want it to be. And in the meantime, I think there's great opportunity to drive productivity across the spectrum, and particularly in the industry we operate in insurance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you highlight some interesting points there about the constraints about that early adoption in web and how analogous that is today with AI in terms of, the access to compute, data centers, the energy footprint associated with driving all of this. You can already see that we have the same sort of constraints starting to form with AI, and that's going to, slow it down inevitably. So yeah, no, interesting perspective. So thanks for sharing that. Great. So tell us a little about Little John. This sounds like a really exciting project. Give us a sense of the problem you're trying to solve. Actually, give us where did you where was the genesis of the idea come from? Tell us about your partners and the organization, and tell us a lot about this.
Yeah, there were a few steps to this. So first of all, when I left LinkedIn at the summer of 2021, one of my two business partners, Grégoire, who was also selling his going to the end of the sale of his company to a large French MGA called April. He'd built an insurance distribution platform, health insurance distribution platform across Asia. And so we both were at a bit of a crossroad, and we looked at building a company together. We're very keen. We enjoyed the complementarity of our profile and so on. And so we looked at a first opportunity then, which was around direct to consumer insurance play. I would say Lemonade would be the company that represents this really, really effectively. And we worked quite hard on this one to try to understand what value we could bring to the table, to realize that it was a fairly busy space with a lot of very well-funded companies. So the question was like, are we a bit late to this party? And second was a fairly challenging one from a cost of acquisition perspective, because those companies tend to focus on one or two insurance products, usually, home insurance, car insurance, which are highly competitive and individuals. And so we decided not to do this company, not to launch that business. But for me, it triggered two things. One, I think we were both disappointed not to do a business together. It wasn't the one, but we're like, gosh, we would love to build together. And so that stays somewhere in our minds. And second, for me, as I looked into that direct to consumer play, I came across the intermediaries in insurance and realized how brokers, insurance brokers, and tied agents, I had kept such a strong hand on the distribution, regardless of all those direct channels coming into play. And this is particularly true in the B2B space. And so I was like, wow, that's, despite all those billions of dollars that are being spent and these great companies that are being built, most of distribution continue to be done through intermediaries. And then, move back to France. Fast forward 2 years, I was at Brevo. Grégoire was at Leclerc. We get back together for a dinner, and he basically makes a comment during that dinner that triggered everything. Where he said, "Oh, again, we're both a bit at a crossroad in our professional adventure, figuring out, do we want to do more of this or do something else?" And he said, "Oh, you know what? We should come to shove. I might just acquire a bunch of insurance portfolios from brokers and put some tech on top of it, and I think I'll be able to create a ton of value." And I said, "Okay, let's pull that thread. Like, what do you mean? Why insurance intermediaries? What technology? Why technology? Where?" And we started digging into this very specific, insurance brokerage, insurance intermediary space, and to discover a few things. One, we built a conviction that these guys were here to stay. And so going back to what I was saying earlier about, the stronghold they kept on distribution, the coverage they have of the regions, the market across Europe and across the world, to be honest, the level of connectivity they have in their market, in their specialties, their advisory capabilities, the trust that is put in them. At the end of the day, you buy insurance, or you have to buy insurance, and it's who you buy it from. And these guys are really great salespeople, be great advisors, and they play a real important role in the distribution. So we're like, okay, we believe that although they are intermediaries, they're not going to be disintermediated. Like the direct to consumer opportunity is not going to completely destroy that profession. Otherwise, what's the point of building for them? So we believe in brokerage, and we believe in intermediaries. That was an important step. Second, we looked at what they were doing day to day, and we looked at it even further later through a design partnership where we literally sat next to brokers to see what was happening in their day-to-day. And all of them systematically told us, listen, like we are struggling. 50 to 60% of our time is spent on collecting documentation, reorganize the data from those documents into specific formats for insurance companies in order to get the core of what they do, which is, underwriting, policy management, claim management, advisory, like all these parts of the business. At every step of the business, they do a lot of copy and pasting and reformatting and reuse of data, and data that comes from documents, because those documents are very important. We're in a regulated industry. Those documents are the underlying compliance, basically proof that they've done their job properly. And they're all telling us, like, we spend hours and hours on this. After our design partnership period, we evaluated to 50 to 60% of the activity of the entire firm. 50, 60% of their time is spent collecting documentation, restructuring it, copying, pasting it, and delivering it in different formats, and in an environment where systems don't really talk to one another. So we're like, whoa, like that's interesting. And we couldn't help but connect this opportunity with the rise of LLM and agents, and saying, oh, we might be able to do something meaningful there. Let's keep digging. Thirdly, when we spoke to them, and I touched upon that a little bit earlier, is we're like, okay, this is not a new problem for them. Like they've had this weight of compliance and administrative tasks in their day-to-day for forever, and it's getting worse and worse, but still it's been there for a long time. So how have they solved it so far? And the answer to this was by throwing people at that problem. They hire production people, basically, that are just doing this day out, just copy and pasting, just collecting documents, just reading those documents to extract the data points that are going to be useful for underwriting or policy management. And what they told us that made a big difference, they said, but we can't hire those people anymore. We don't find them. And really, we're talking about people that used to have people in their firm that said 15, 20 years during this. Picture someone with a desk with like a lot of piles of documents and big cabinet behind those documents. And that person to whom you say, oh, can you find me this element in the file of company A? And then turn around and they'll find it and they say, it's like, this is it. They have this superpower, but it's a superpower in a very messy environment. So handover is very complex. And the reality of younger generations, they come in, they do this job for 6 months, maybe a year. And after that, they say, okay, well, I've done that. What's next for me in the firm? And the answer is like more of that. And the previous person did it for 15 years. They've done it for 1 year. And so they're like, we all have an open head count. And this is where we said, okay, this is why they might be ready for a tech solution, for a different way of addressing that problem than to throw people at it. And this is really was the start of Little John. This is, okay, we're going to build really a set of tools and AI workflows dedicated to insurance intermediaries with a few goals. The primary goal is really to improve their productivity. Second is to improve their compliance, because it's kind of connected. If you do it properly, collect documentation properly, structure the data properly, you'll have a much better compliance, which is really important. It's kind of life and death for their business. And third, help them be even better advisors, because they'll have better data set, better structure, and time that will be extracted from all that copy and pasting and administrative work that they were doing before.
Yeah, fantastic. It must have been quite an exciting moment when you managed to align your hypothesis of, I think we can help here, I think there's efficiencies to be made, with the work then that you did directly with the intermediaries, where you did the analysis on the activity and went, crikey, 60% here, cool, there's a lot we can do. That must have been a really, great moment. And then you haven't got your product quite then, but you've got your thread to pull on that one, haven't you? That must have been...
No, absolutely. I mean, so I love the concept of design partnership. I think that there's no better way to validate a set of assumptions and make sure you're building the right things than to really sit down next to the end customer. And so we approached, close to 20 brokers across France, and we signed a bit of a partnership agreement with them, saying, hey, listen, we'll sit down with you, we'll observe, and we'll give you early access to the product in return, and you'll get also a lifetime discount on the product if and when we go live. And we came across incredibly incredible partners. Like they really played along. We tried to build in the portfolio of design partners also different shapes and forms of brokers. Some are more focused on, PNC, others are more on like people and health insurance, and others are mixing both, medium size, large size, specialized, less specialized. So we try to have a fairly representative, which is quite hard, but a fairly representative picture of the profession, to see if the problem of a small firm that focuses on B2C versus a medium firm that focuses on B2B, or health versus PNC, whether the problem we identified, or we thought we identified, was similar or different. And yes, the design partnership was great because it confirmed the underlying assumption. B, it confirmed that it was across the board and across size and shapes of brokers, which validated the size of the market we were trying to address. It's always important to know your TAM and to know that you are going after a large opportunity. And for us, that was the case. And it really allowed us to also prioritize our product roadmap, decide what to do first and second, based on the commonality of those challenges as they were described by the brokers.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's not technology for technology's sake. You are really solving a real world problem, and you've got empirical evidence through that design partnership around how you're going to do that. And I love the way that's helped you to prioritize the roadmap as well. I mean, there's so many benefits to that approach. It's just great. So yeah, wonderful. So tell us, there's a big announcement that you guys have made this week, right?
Yes, last week. Well, there are a few things that happened over the course of the months of May. So what we've done is we launched an MVP of our product last summer, so a year ago, that we delivered to our design partnership, had them play, and we had some really good feedback on it. Started to monetize it from September onward, and realized that, although the product was doing a really good job, our ability to scale that product to the different use cases that brokers had, we still had a lot of engineering involved into building what we call the template. So just to summarize the product, on one hand, you have an ingestion engine. We're able to ingest all forms of documents, from a company registration to a set of email exchange with a customer, to a farmer contract, to a bunch of like vehicle licenses and registrations, people licenses, and so on. And then so that's the data collection and data structuring component of it, using LLMs. And then there's the agents, which are basically taking what we call templates, which are specific use cases. To give you one specific one, for example, underwriting a vehicle fleet for an organization, for a company, which is a very common one, and happens to be quite time consuming because you need a document from the vehicles, the document from the drivers, past claims for every vehicle, and etc. So a lot of documents that come in different shapes and forms and different formats, from PDFs to Excels and so on. And we realized that our ability to ship templates that are specific to each company was taking us time. And so we had a number of templates, and our go-to-market was really subject to us being able to ship a new template that open up a whole set of brokers, because it's one use case that makes sense, and so on. And so we started working on so we decided in Q1 this year not to accelerate our go-to-market, because we felt that the scalability of it would have been challenging, but really to take care of our 20 paying customers, and to focus Q1 on building the V2 of the product, which was going to be a lot more versatile in terms of ability for the brokers to assemble their own agent. So it's a little bit pompous the way I'm going to present it, but the vision is I would say the lovable of brokerage, meaning they are able to either use the templates we give them, but they're also able to assemble agents in a way that's going to deliver ultimately the template they want, and the way they do it, the way they like to present the risk to their insurance company, which is kind of their special sauce, and that was necessary. So the great news we had this month, first on the 11th of May, we launched this V2, and it's been super well received by our brokers. Very exciting. And in the process of launching this V2, that opened up for us the opportunity to serve also smaller brokers. We focused the beginning of our go-to-market on what we call the mid-market brokers, which are brokers above 1 million in commissions. And there's, of course, between 0 and 1 million, there's a lot of brokers that sit there, but we were convinced that we're going to serve them at some point, but we needed the right product from a self-service and a versatility perspective, and B, we needed to also find the right channel of acquisition, like to get in front of these guys, because obviously their average revenue, their entry point is a bit lower because they are smaller firms and we need to be affordable for them. And during the entire month of May, we've negotiated with the industry trade association in France, which is called Planète CSCA. So it's the industry trade association for insurance brokers.
Yep.
We showed them our solution, and the president and the committee that runs this association said, listen, we really want to bring AI to the largest number of brokers, and so to those sub 1 million brokers. And so we'd like to work with you on a price point and a starter pack that is a good entry point and a reasonable entry point for them, and a partnership where we could give a special discount and offer something unique to our members and to our brokers. And we announced the signing of this partnership on the 4th of June, so just last week, during a big event called 11 bis, which is one of the industry trade events that was happening in Paris. And so we're super excited about that we position us as the AI solution for brokers in the French market. Our ambitions go beyond France, but being successful in France is extremely important for us. And so that was a big step for us.
Yeah, amazing. Congratulations. That sounds like a wonderful piece of news and exciting. Just give me a sense, and listeners a sense of what of the size of the market that now opens up for you potentially in terms of, number of brokerages.
So insurance intermediaries in France, about 60,000 brokers and tied agents across France. So it's massive.
Yeah, huge.
When you go to, so we were focused on the mid market, and so I would say we're focused on the 10, 15,000 that were sitting in the middle. Now we're opening up basically all brokers of all shapes and size. And we're also at the same time been working on large accounts. And so we're also working with MGAs, specialized insurance companies. So we're also opening, both the upper end and the lower end of the spectrum of our different ICPs for the solution. And so our AI workspace now is going to be, delivered in different form to different segments of the market, which is really exciting.
Yeah, no, well done, mate. That sounds amazing. So as an Englishman, always very interested in what's going on across the channel in France. Many fond memories of holidays and all that good stuff. Love the rugby. Tell us a little bit about the working culture in France, then, just finally, around the tech scene, access to talent, and is the sort of working sort of environment conducive to a startup of your nature? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so as you know, I spent 20 years away from France, being an entrepreneur and working for large tech companies. And so when I came back to France, I didn't know what to expect from that perspective. I came back to a much more mature environment, both from the capital perspective. I think access to capital now, you have a very strong set of VCs that are operating in France. You have a very strong set of pan-European VCs that operates from the UK and Amsterdam and all over, that are very familiar with the French market.
Yeah.
So, if you think about what you need to build that ecosystem, the capital side, honestly, is quite well covered, and there is capital. Of course, capital isn't cheap these days. As you know, it's harder and harder to raise money, but if you have a good product and if you're able to demonstrate a good traction, the capital environment is there, and it's matured a lot from a venture perspective. From a talent perspective, France has always been really strong on the engineering side. I think we've historically been able to produce good quality engineers and developers, and so it continues to be the case. Of course, it's a world that's changing a lot with AI coding and so on. And so what's the role of an engineer and a front end or a back end developer? Nevertheless, you have good talent, and especially good talent that train themselves on the underlying technology that we care about, which is really AI and agentic AI. So we find talent. We operate in a fully distributed way, which allow us to go and get the talent where it sits, which is a good idea when I think you operate in a space where the talent is relatively scarce, and where it's quite challenging. Now, the good news, bad news is there's the tech environment from a hiring perspective has changed a lot. It used to be all the talent were going to the big companies. The big companies have been laying off quite a bit. They are, after hiring a lot, now they are restructuring, and that means that there's a lot of good talent on the market for us to access to, and so it's really about selling them the dream of what is it that we're building and why they should believe in us and get on board, and it's quite good. And also you get support, relatively good support. For example, for our first fundraising, which was our pre-seed round, we got support from the BPI, which is the French sovereign fund, with some quite advantageous access to debt capital and so on. So it's a good environment to operate from. We want to be pan-European though, and so we're also looking at hiring people across the UK, the Netherlands, Spain. Wherever the talent is, we'll go and get it, because we think it's going to be as always a war of talent. It's if you have the good if you have the good people, you would win the battle.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's amazing to hear, and it's good to know that there's a strong setup in France to help you deliver what you're going to deliver. So great, wonderful stuff. Okay, so last question for you then, Olivier. So we ask everyone this question, but you've obviously had a very wide, varied career across many territories and many organizations. But what's the one piece of advice you'd have given, what you know now, which you'd have given your 18-year-old self, which would have stood you in good stead during that journey? What do you wish you knew when you were 18 that you know now?
I mean, the main thing for me is not to shy away from difficulty. Like, the complex problems are the one where you unpack and learn the most. And I think when you get into a new company, and oftentimes you get the not so fun, sometimes a bit complex, repetitive tasks. It's okay. Go in it, do them, understand them. Don't do them just for doing them, but understand them deeply, because they will get you to understand the fundamental of the businesses you're part of in a very unique way. I mean, the example I could give you is, customer success, for example. Like, customer success is extremely powerful. This is the place where, especially in self-service tech businesses, this is the only moment you talk to your customers. Like, it's when they have a problem with your tool, and how you show up at that time, and how you're able to take those bugs or issues and turn them into product feedback that you can then percolate into the organization, is extremely powerful. And so those jobs that can seem tough, and because you are in front of a client, and that client's sometimes unhappy, and you don't always have the right answer immediately, they may seem like difficult and tough, but although they are difficult and tough, they teach you so much about the foundation of the business. And so I think, not shying away from complexity. On the contrary, going where other peoples don't want to go because they find it like difficult or challenging and so on, is going to pay off, in my opinion, because that means you'll have an edge on everybody, and you'll be able to understand things. It's hard work, but it's hard work that pays off.
Amazing advice. I think that's wonderful, and I think we could all do with taking a little bit of that, and fronting up to some of those challenges. So that's great. So amazing, really great to have you on today. If anyone wants to know a little bit about yourself or Little John, where do they need to go?
So little-john.io is our website. Of course, you can find me on LinkedIn, Olivier Legrand. Having spent 10 years at the company, I'm quite active on the platform, and so don't hesitate to reach out directly through LinkedIn messaging or through our website.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you very much for being on today. A really insightful guest, lots of knowledge, experience, and quite frankly, a really exciting journey moving forward for Little John. So I'm really looking forward to watching that company grow and seeing how it's going to make an impact in the insurance world. So thanks again, and thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.